where you live in North America. Yes, they'll be harmful to Canadians, but they will also be harmful to Americans, increasing the inflationary environment, increasing the costs at the fuel pumps, increasing the costs at the grocery stores, but also decreasing jobs. And the job loss will be felt on both sides of the borders, and it will be decreasing the investment environment that we in Saskatchewan have worked very hard to ensure that is a viable investment environment. And I would say the investment environment in North America is going to be much less appetizing than it has been, and much less advantageous, again, for each of us that live in North America. I've been very clear from the beginning of this conversation with my comments around the imposition of these Trump tariffs on Canada, is we need to do everything that we can to engage and to de-escalate the talk of tariffs, the imposition of tariffs, and the talk therein, and not do anything to escalate this discussion. Our North American economy is very integrated and is much stronger when we are operating in a non-tariff environment, and it's incumbent on each of us as political leaders to do what we can to de-escalate any conversation or any talk around the imposition of these very, very harmful tariffs. We also need to do what we can to work alongside our largest trading partner, which is the United States of America. Now, I've said many times that we should take what President Trump says very seriously, but not necessarily literally. That being said, there has been the priority put on border security, illegal migrants maybe flowing back and forth across the 49th parallel or in and out of North America through any of our partner ports, as well as our airports. In addition to that, the availability of drugs, specifically fentanyl, in our North American communities has also been identified as a challenge by the Trump administration. We've taken action in this space in our province, and I'd say there's been action taken across Canada as well, with the $1.3 billion that has been invested by our Canadian government. In addition to that, you've seen action taken in Saskatchewan with refocusing some of our existing resources and being able to build up to 95 available officers should any need should arise along our 49th parallel. And I would say that the efforts of those law enforcement officers, whether they be the RCMP, whether they be our municipal officers or provincial law enforcement officers that we have, and all of them working together are starting to show results, as you see some of the seizures of fentanyl and other drugs and other contraband substances that are happening not just in Saskatchewan but in other places of Canada as well. I would note, just as of this morning, and just very recent and high-level information, that it appears that maybe Mexico has received a 30-day reprieve on the imposition of tariffs from the Trump administration. And I would point to a proposal that I had provided on one of our First Ministers meetings and provided publicly, where Canada would have the opportunity to pull the Canadian Border Security Agency, or the CBSA, in under our military. It would provide two things immediately. One, provide the availability for troops along our border, the 49th parallel between Canada and the U.S., thereby addressing concerns that President Trump has raised. And two, would bring our CBSA funding in under the military investment, would be part of ensuring we are working towards our 2% NATO commitment that we have. This is an advancing situation, as I understand it, with respect to the conversation between President Trump and Mexico. And I would hope, and I've urged and I've reached out to Minister Dominic LeBlanc, to reconsider the proposal that I had provided earlier, and if that has any merit in advancing this conversation, de-escalating the imposition of tariffs on Canadian businesses and ultimately Canadian families. What do we need to do as we move forward? And I would say each of us has an opportunity to participate in engaging with contacts that we may have in Canada and south of the border, in the industries and in the careers that we spend and friends that we have each and every day. We're certainly doing that at the political level, engaging with political leaders, decision makers throughout about the U.S. on what a strong, integrated, growing North American economy can do, and the food and energy security that the province of Saskatchewan brings to that conversation. Businesses and industry have equally an opportunity to engage up and down their supply chains with U.S. businesses, with U.S. partners that they may know, and I would encourage them to do so, and each of us as individuals do as well. In addition to that, our provincial engagement is extending beyond the U.S. As you know, I'll be in Washington next week, followed very quickly by spending a short period of time in Mexico as well. Mexico is a market of interest, an export market of interest for Saskatchewan, and becoming increasingly a much stronger trading partner with the introduction of USMCA a number of years ago. We export over $1 billion to Mexico the last year or two, and we'll be spending a short period of time in Mexico engaging with decision makers there as well. Our Ministry of Trade and Export and Development, Warren Keating, was out Friday for a Minister of Trade meeting to look at removing what interprovincial barriers we may have through the CFTA, and our encouragement at that meeting was for all provinces to remove as many or all of the exemptions that they have to that CFTA trade agreement, and to encourage the federal government also to equally take seriously the importance of removing the exemptions that the federal government has in the CFTA, and the largest number of exemptions in that agreement is the federal government. We're actively looking at can Saskatchewan remove all of those exemptions, or certainly remove most of them. I think we have 7, maybe 8 as we speak. I've asked our Trade and Export Minister to remain in Ottawa for an extra couple of days as he is engaging with numerous ambassadors from other markets of interest. Saskatchewan, as we know, is 55% reliant when it comes to the percentage of our exports on U.S. trade. We are likely the least reliant on the U.S. when it comes to our export market of any province in Canada. We need to further diversify and further engage the trade that we do and the exports that we provide to over 160 countries around the world. And our Minister of Trade and Export is engaging on that front as we speak. Again, we are going to focus not only on our engagement in the U.S., but our engagement using the contacts that we have made over the course of the last number of years around the world. And I would add that at times we've been criticized for that engagement and the focus and the priority that we have put on that engagement and growing our market share and growing our opportunities for exports and growing our investment attraction effort in countries all over the world. The fact is that Saskatchewan is very much a significant supplier of food and energy security for the people that live in this province, this nation, live on this continent, and to over 160 countries around the world. I would close just by saying this. No one wants to be in the situation that we currently find ourselves. Likely the most challenging situation in recent history, and certainly may well be one of the most challenging situations that we've seen since we've last been involved in any actual wartime conflict. This is going to have an impact on our agricultural producers up and down the supply chain in the ag industry in Saskatchewan. It will have an impact on our miners up and down the supply chain as well, all of those involved in the mining industry, whatever the product might be, our oil and energy workers, as well as our retailers in our urban centers and in our communities across this province. This will have an impact, and I would implore on our federal government to work alongside the provinces, as they have been, but to ensure they are always looking at options like we saw in Mexico this morning to have these tariffs removed, if it even is for a short period of time, so that we can further our engagement and further the integration and further the opportunity that we have to implore on one individual, President Trump, that seems bent on using these tariffs in some way, shape, or form to destabilize the investment environment that we have in North America, to destabilize the energy and food security that we have been able to acquire in North America over the course of the last number of decades and maybe even the century, and the significant role that Saskatchewan plays in this. And again, I would just say that everything that we do as leaders, political leaders, business leaders, community leaders, needs to be focused on the long term and needs to be focused on de-escalating the conversation around imposing tariffs on one another, de-escalating the conversation around harmfully reducing the opportunity that we have in that strong, growing, and vibrant North American economy, and focusing on ensuring that these tariffs are removed as soon as possible, like it appears they may have been for a period of time in Mexico this morning. So, with that, I'd open it up to any questions. Phil?
Yeah, can you clarify your position on, we now see retaliatory, Canada's plan for retaliatory tariffs. We've seen other provinces take U.S. liquor off the shelves. I know the regime here is different than, say, in Ontario, Manitoba, Quebec, elsewhere. What do you think of the are you for no retaliatory tariffs whatsoever? And what do you think specifically? I mean, you are still the wholesaler for liquor here. So what do you think about actually?
Yeah, and so there's some provinces that are making specific decisions, whether it be on things like liquor that's available in their publicly owned stores, public systems that we have in various provinces, as well as procurement. There's other provinces making decisions around procurement. We're looking at what opportunities Saskatchewan might have in that space. Not to say that we would act on any of those, non-tariff or retaliatory measures. However, we are looking at, what opportunities we might have that could go under consideration. Again, I've been very clear when it comes to tariffs of any kind, whether they be retaliatory tariffs, counter tariffs, or whether they be the initial tariffs that are imposed by President Trump. They're harmful to everyone that lives in North America. The small suite are growing now. First instance of retaliatory or counter tariffs that the federal government has imposed has grown from its original iteration, and unfortunately it's necessary. Unfortunately, it is necessary. If we find ourselves in a broad tariff war or trade war where everything that is flowing north and south is subject to tariffs, Canadians will lose that. We are an exporting province and we are an exporting nation, and we should not be heading that direction. That should not be the goal, and we should not be openly discussing what that might look like, because the goal and the focus and everything that we do needs to be heading exactly the other direction, where we are removing the tariffs that could potentially be imposed, whether they be President Trump's tariffs or the counter tariffs that have even been proposed by our Canadian government. So we unfortunately do support the first suite of counter tariffs that have been introduced. Looking at the second list that is there, are not supportive in any way of export tariffs that would be tariffing, whether that be electricity coming out of Manitoba, Quebec.
All right.